There you go.
All right, so it looks like we have just about everyone here. We're very happy to have you, and I'll start off with just a short introduction because tomorrow myself, as well as your other instructor, Nicole Cliff, will be giving you full introductions. But my name's Sarah Reese. I'm the director here at the Georgia Cyber Center for the Cyber Workforce Academy, and we'll be conducting the Cyber Dawg training this year. So this kickoff, this familiarization session that we're doing via live streaming on YouTube, as I mentioned before, will be recorded. But this is just to help get you familiar with the systems that we'll be using and make sure that everyone can log in and navigate and just reach the resources that they should be able to. Please take into account that this is a YouTube live session, and we do have live chat enabled, which means that if you have real-time problems or questions that you think are appropriate to this conversation, you can go ahead and put those in the chat, and that will get relayed to me, and we will see what we can answer. If we can't answer it, or it's something that's really outside the scope of this streaming session, then what we'll do is we will get with you after the session and make sure we try to answer those questions. So I'll go ahead and get started with this. Again, I encourage you to have your credentials for both the Cyber Range as well as Canvas nearby so that you can, if possible, follow along or try this after we go over it. So I will start with letting you know that, as I mentioned before, there are two primary platforms that we'll be using for this training outside of the streaming video, which is where you will be receiving all of your lecture content, just like we're doing today. So besides from the lecture content, you will be working with our Canvas LMS. This is our learning management system. And I'm going to switch us into a view where you can see what you should see when you log directly into Canvas. So if you have not logged into Canvas, I will reach out to you afterwards because I can see in the system who has logged in and who has not. But if you have not logged into Canvas, please try to do so by the end of today. You can see here, once you've logged into Canvas, finished your account setup, it'll take you to the home page for CyberDawg 2020. Now you can click the link here, the Get Started link, and that will take you to the area that you need to navigate to, but you can also just access it here on the navigation browser on the left where it says Modules. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put us into what's called Student View. This is going to be exactly what you see. This should be on the left, what you see as far as your navigation options. Okay, so this is what you are seeing when you log in. Again, we're going to go ahead and move to the modules. You'll see that we are on day 1, the 21st of September. We have the agenda. This should have been emailed to you, but if you need another copy, you can find that here, as well as a link for our Range Quick Start Guide. This is an attached PDF. You're welcome to download this, or you can view it in browser. But this is just going to give you a quick start guide in case some of the things that we go over today, as far as when we get to the range, in case you weren't able to follow along, or you had questions, or you just want to focus on the video and then try to go in later. This guide is going to be here to help you get through the range and accessing that and using your resources. So I'm going to take us back to modules. Again, the Quick Start Guide is something you can download and access via PDF. You'll see here we have a live link that was for the 11 to 11:30 scheduled opening remarks by David Allen that I'm sure most of you attended with us. And then here we have the Range Intro and Familiarization live streaming link, which is where we are currently. Now, each of these links are live links to the YouTube unlisted live stream, just the same way as what's on the agenda. So you can either use your agenda to live link into the address for our YouTube stream, or you can use this platform here. Now you'll notice that starting tomorrow, we will have lecture in the morning scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. I'd encourage you to please be here a few minutes before 9 a.m. so that you are not missing anything. Once we start that lecture up, we will go over Linux as an operating system, and then at the end of that lecture, give or take between an hour to an hour and a half, we have an optional Linux commands lab for you. This will be your first exercise that's conducted inside of the Cyber Range. In the afternoon, you'll be doing traffic analysis with Ms. Nicole Cliff, and you'll see that again here we have a live link where you can click on that, and that'll take you directly to the unlisted live streaming site where she'll be up on YouTube at 1300 teaching that curriculum. After she's done with that curriculum, you'll be released to do the labs on your own again, just as you did in the morning. Those labs will be performed on the cyber range, and the instructions for each of those labs are found here. So I will go ahead and go into the Telnet lab instructions just so you can see what these lab prompts look like. They all look generally just like this, where we have a little bit of an overview about what you will be doing in the lab, talking about the lab environment and how to get that started up. And I will demo all of this in the cyber range so that you see exactly how this works. And then we will look at tasks. These are things that you will be performing or doing during the lab, along with pictures and applicable commands. Anytime you see something here in gray where we have these numbered lines, this would be something where you are typing these commands in. So this is what this should indicate to you. This gray space should emulate what you would see in your command terminal as you're typing that in. Where you see items like this, where we see Telnet and then inside of these symbols IP address, you will actually need to replace all of this with the IP address of the target client. So Telnet and then an actual appropriate IP address as you discover that from working inside of these VMs. So again, these are the lab prompts. They should walk you through everything. You need to make sure that you follow them step by step and read them thoroughly before moving on. If you just go and try to type in a command, go to the next prompt, type in a command, it's going to be problematic because, as you'll see when we get into the range, you'll have numerous command prompts open. So you need to read these prompts very thoroughly and get oriented to your environment so that you understand where these commands are going to be performed and what in fact they will be doing or enabling you to do. So at the end of your lab prompt, you'll see instructions on stopping the labtainer. Basically, and I will get into this more when we look at the cyber range, all of your labs will be spun off of a platform inside of your VM, and these labs will, you are able to stop them and restart them at any time. So once you do the stop lab command with the name of the lab, that's going to tear down the work. It will save either your grades or the status at which you were at in the lab, and you can resume that later if you just restart that lab. So again, this is how you stop the lab. The beginning is where you see the instructions on starting the lab, and we will demo all of that inside of the range for you when we get to that portion of the familiarization. But this is just to give you an idea of what your lab prompt looks like. You can access this directly from inside of your VM on the range. I'll also show you how that looks and how that works so that you don't have to toggle between the two windows if you don't want to. For those of you that are using dual monitors, it may be something you choose to have one pulled up on one monitor with the range in another monitor. But again, this is going to depend on your setup. So coming back to modules, I do want to point out to you that each of these labs are written with a prompt to where you will take all the activities inside of your VM and grading will happen automatically upon stopping the lab, except for the packet introspection lab. This is the only lab that will require you to record or note your answers to each of the questions and then input those answers within a quiz that is built out right here underneath our lab prompt. And that is something that your lab prompt does instruct you on. It says that you need to make sure that you take those answers and you input them into this quiz in order to get credit. You'll see that we also have a few resources here at the bottom that are appropriate to the traffic analysis, a PDF for TCP dump as well as Wireshark filters. And the other days we do not have unlocked because we didn't want you guys going too far ahead as people will do. But the other 2 days, the 23rd and the 24th, will become published after tomorrow and you will see those pop up. Again, this is what we will be covering tomorrow. At the end of the day tomorrow, we will publish the following day's links so that you have those live and you'll see that those all stack. The previous days will remain active, so you'll still have access to see those. Now, if you're curious as far as the grades go, when you are doing your lab access, this will automatically capture your information. Now you can see that for this particular profile, this was a test that we did to run to make sure that the grades were uploading properly. But I will let you know that for these particular assignments, you should get a 100 or a 0. You will not get any partial scoring. The way these are built, if you take all of the steps that are noted inside of the lab, you will get 100%. If you have areas that you don't feel you were able to get work as they should, please just take note of those, and we'll try to discuss those during our lecture or at a Q&A or at some point in the future. But again, if you follow all of the prompts in the labs, you should be able to get a 100% on that lab. And that will show up populated here as the score that you've achieved. Again, so this is the Canvas platform. This is where you can access the links if you would like. They are also listed on your agenda. This is also where you can access all of your lab prompts. Those are also located inside of your VM. And this is where specifically for tomorrow, you will need to address the packet introspection quiz and answer the questions for that particular lab. All of the following day's labs and the other labs conducted during that day do not require any additional items. They're just performed on the VM and recorded, and the grades are sent from there. So that's all we have in the Canvas LMS tab. So I'm going to switch us over to the range. Now, everyone should have in an email from us a welcome letter as well as their Georgia Cyber Range credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and put my credentials in. Please note that the domain up here, you're going to need to type the word default into that domain. So again, default will be your domain name. You will put in your username. That for many of you may be first name dot last name. It may be your email address, something of that nature. You should have received that instruction in a welcome letter. You'll also put in your password. The default password is going to be CyberDawg. It's a capital C for cyber, a capital D for dog, spelled D-A-W-G, and then the number 2020. This will be the default password for everyone. Now, once you log in, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to change that default password. So once we log in, you're going to immediately be dropped into an overview and a summary of the resources that you have available to you. Yours will look slightly different than ours. This is our instructor project where we have our instructor platforms, but we do have replicas of the VMs that you're going to be using for demonstration purposes. But from here, if you go to the upper rightmost corner where you see your login name and the little icon, if you click this drop down and access the settings wheel, this will open this new view. From here, you can see I have user settings where you can change time zones or things of that nature, which you shouldn't need to do. And you can use the change password tab. You will need to put in the current password, which again is the default password of CyberDawg 2020. And then you will put in your new password and confirm as such. Once you're finished with changing this password, and again, I'll reiterate, these instructions are in the Quick Start Guide that's located in Canvas. Once you've finished changing your password, you will be kicked out and need to log back in, obviously because you have a new password. Logging back in, again, you will be directed upon your login to the overview page. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, we have a menu of drop-downs. You should not need to work in the identify drop-down, or I'm sorry, identity drop-down. You will be looking at your project drop-down. And then inside of this, the only place that you'll really need to be looking at is inside of compute, which again, if you need to expand that, you can do as such. But if you're in the overview tab, you can just take this down to the very next option, which is instances. Once we've entered into the instances navigation area, you'll see a list. Now here I have 4 different items. You should all have one item that looks like this, the GTA_labtainers. For demonstration purposes, I will be taking you into our instructor box. But again, you should see something like this, the GTA_labtainers. On the far left, where you see the instance name, this hyperlink is where you're going to want to click in order to access options for that instance. Now, when we say instance, this is OpenStack as a cloud framework. Instances are synonymous with a VM or virtual machine. So once you click on that instance name, and you should have only one to click on, you'll see that there's an overview, interfaces, log, console, action log. Of these tabs on the top, the only one you'll need to access for the purposes of this course is console. Once you click on that console, you should see something like this open up, where you see a VM here. Now, in this view right here, it may be a little difficult to scroll down and get everything in this window. So if you'll notice this hyperlink here that is in the blue box, click here to show only console. What I personally like to do is I like to open this in a new tab so that I have that tab here and I can always browse back. Now from inside of this VM, you can see that I can access my mouse. There's a tiny little bit of delay because I'm on a different network than the range, obviously, and this is in the cloud. But I can go ahead and access down here different items. Oops. So you'll notice down here in my start area, I have the console, or the terminal. So here I've opened up a terminal. This terminal window is what you will use in order to start labs, check your directory, do things of Linux nature, if you will. This is a Ubuntu machine. This is the latest version 20 for Ubuntu. So once you open up this command prompt down here, again, the shortcut is right down here at the bottom in the left. It looks like a little black box. Once you open up that terminal, you'll notice that this terminal drops you into the proper directory. You're in Labtainer's student. That is the directory you will need to be in whenever you go ahead and deploy your labs. Now you'll see in the lab prompt, and I will switch you back over here and we'll open up a lab prompt as an example. You will see here that there are directions given as to the directory that you need to be in. The only reason you wouldn't be in that directory is if you changed your directory manually. If you open a new terminal, it will automatically drop you into that directory. So you'll notice here, it lets you know this is the directory that you need to be in, and the command to start this particular lab is going to be labtainer telnet lab. Each of these labs will be labtainer and then the name of the lab. For example, labtainer snort or labtainer packet introspection. And again, you'll see that in this lab prompt. So over here, we're going to go ahead and start this up to demonstrate how this looks. Now what this is going to be doing is it's going to be pulling and creating a series of Docker containers. So Docker is the container engine that's being used. You are, upon the first time you issue this command, going to be asked to enter a registered Canvas email address. If you do not put the email address that you registered with for Canvas, none of these grades will be counted. This address has to match the address that you are registered in Canvas for, and you can check that in your account settings for Canvas. This would be the same address that you registered for CyberDawg training with. So that is the email address that you need to put here. I can't stress enough, if you do not put the right email address here, you will not be able to get credit for these labs. So you're going to enter that, and again, you'll only have to enter that the first time. It will default to that email address every other lab that you open. That will just be the first time that you'll have to input that. Now you'll notice here before I press enter, this says the lab manual is at and this hyperlink. If I would like to open it within the VM rather than toggling back to another window, I can do so here. Otherwise, I can go ahead and press enter and I can keep the prompt in another link. So here, as you can see, I can open this link and have this displayed inside of here. If I'd like, it will pull up in a Firefox browser. So you see now that is inside of my VM. Sorry about that, that was a very fast scroll. Okay, so you'll see that that is here. I'm going to close that out just to save room on this desktop. Okay, so again, you can open this inside of the VM, or you can just keep it open in another tab as I've done here. So here you will now need to press enter to start the lab, which we will do. And this is where your Docker containers will deploy. Now each of these containers is like a VM, but less so. So a VM would have an entire operating system. These containers are basically using the host operating system on this Ubuntu machine for those components, but they are adding to and isolating specific resources for their own use. So imagine them as mini VMs. They have much of the same information and capabilities as your host does, but not all of them. Now, I will point out to you that as these containers spin up, you will only ever have terminal access. So you see this particular lab spun up 2 terminals, and if you'll notice at the top of these terminals, they have a name. One is Ubuntu at client, and the other is Ubuntu at server. That is how you will distinguish one Docker from the other. And if you look at the lab prompt, you will be prompted to do certain activities in one terminal versus another. So you'll have specific instructions for what you need to do on the client versus what you need to do on the server. So from the server, you'll see I can issue a Linux command, IP address, and I can shorten that to ipadder, but I'll show you the whole address, IP address command. And if you're unfamiliar with Linux, the good news is tomorrow we will be going through this as well as getting you spun up on some basic Linux commands and how to use it. So don't worry about that too much. As long as you can actually deploy your lab and get into your VM, you're going to be okay. As you see from the IP address command, we have a loopback, which obviously every machine is going to come with a loopback address. And then you have the Ethernet address that this particular Docker container is seeing. So this means that our server terminal, the server's identity is going to be this IP address, the 172.20.0.3. And then if I come over here to my client and I check its IP address, oh, they don't have that installed. But I can, in fact, do what I need to do for this lab, which is to telnet. And you'll see in the instructions, you need to telnet from the client into the server. You'll see there that it allows me to telnet directly into the server without any issue, okay? Now, if you go in here and you're performing an activity in one of these containers, such as telnet, for example, and you want to basically kill that, you can use the Control-C inside of the terminal to kill that command or process. That's what I did in order to terminate this telnet request without having to put in a unique username and password and hope that it works, and so on and so forth. So you can see here, again, I have these 2 terminals open for my containers. Now, please take note that you also have this original terminal here open that you used in order to start up the labs. You need to leave this open. You are welcome to minimize it to prevent confusion. But basically, these containers are going to be tied to this, and you're going to want to leave this open so that you can stop these containers from this same terminal. So again, minimize this container if you'd like in order to declutter your desktop. But when you get ready to stop these containers, it's important that you issue the stop lab command from inside of this terminal. If you are inside of this terminal and you issue that command, what it will do is gracefully tear down those containers as well as all of the artifacts on the operating system that would be left over. If you simply X out of those terminals, what will happen is there will be leftover networking and other type of artifacts from those containers and some of the zombie processes, if you will, that are going to continue to run. This will stop you from successfully deploying different labtainer labs in the future. So just make sure that you do follow the directions and issue your stop lab command from the container where you from the terminal where you opened the labtainer to begin with. You'll also notice here that as I did the stop lab, it has given me some information about whether or not I have completed this lab and some of the things that it was checking for. If you read the lab prompt, you'll notice in the tasks there is going to be some items where you need to view something from Telnet, you need to view something from SSH, and then you need to attempt something which will cause a failed login. Each of these steps that are in the prompt are going to be gradable items here. So again, even though you are unable to log in, that is the intended result. So the failed login itself is being recorded as a part of your completion for this lab. In this case, this lab has already been submitted, and it will not overwrite a grade of 100 with a 0. So if you'd like to go in and try the lab again after you've completed it and you're afraid of having your grade overwritten with a 0, don't be afraid of that. Once you have completed the lab, it is going to take the highest grade and it will never overwrite that with a lower grade. Your grade of 0 will change to 100, and again, it will never get overwritten by a 0. Even if you choose to continue to do this lab or practice again in the future. So that is a look at going in and starting up your lab and then going ahead and tearing that down. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to show you another item which we will be accessing in day 3. Well, I'll show you a couple more items while we're in here. I'm going to go ahead and close this terminal out. Here where you see the little bird looking icon, if you open that up, this is your start bar. You can see that I can access Firefox if I need to do some web browsing. I have some office tools. I have your Office LibreOffice suite here, so if I needed any of these items here. Number of accessories. FeatherPad would be what you would use as far as a notepad, and you'll see when we get into some of the labs in day 2 and 3, you'll have to use FeatherPad in order to open some files. But what we're going to do right now is just get into Firefox. Okay, again, this is a Linux machine, but as you can see, it's got a desktop environment installed, so you are able to go in just like you would in a GUI Windows environment and go to different websites. So these VMs are connected to the internet. You can see here it automatically went to our home web page. What we're going to be showing you for the purposes of this demo is what we will be doing on day 3, which is we will be accessing an internal resource for a part of our training. And so you can see I'm going to be putting in an HTTP, not HTTPS. Again, this is internal, so that is fine. It's a 10 address, so it's, oops, clearly internal. Got a typo there. And I think this is the address. Oops. And you'll see I had to put the entire, my bad, entire socket because it is not hosted on port 80. It is on 8080, which is an alternate HTTP address. And this is case sensitive. We're going to want web and then GOAT. The W and the G are going to be capitalized. So you'll see here, it's taken me to, again, this is an internally hosted site. From here, you're going to want to register new user. You do not need to do this now, especially if you're going to forget your password. I would just wait to do this on day 3. But when you go to register your password, you're going to create a username and password, and it'll go ahead and create an account for you. So I will tell you that with this, the password is between 6 and 10 characters. It's very specific. It will not let you do less than 6 or more than 10. So that may be a challenge for you, just trying to figure out how to create a good password that's in that parameter. But again, this is an internal resource, so you don't have to worry about this being anything external, and this will all be purged after the training. And we'll talk more about WebGoat. We will be talking more about WebGoat as we get into day 3. Okay. So I'll go ahead and recap. Basically what we've gone over so far is we've looked at the area in which you will access the learning management platform. This is Canvas, sorry. This is where we can check our grades. We can locate the live links for our streaming lecture if you don't want to access the agenda. You also have different resources here, such as a range quick start guide and some great resources for the lecture and training tomorrow. You'll also see that we have the lab prompts here. They're also accessible from inside of your lab environment, but this is something where you can review this or keep this up in another window if you'd like. Again, you can use your grade tab here to see what you have completed. And you'll notice, I forgot to mention this when we looked at Canvas, you'll notice here I have the Georgia Cyber Range link in the navigation bar on the left. If I click that, it will allow me to open this in a new tab, taking me directly to the Cyber Range. So if you don't know the address for the Cyber Range, you just have to access it here from within the Canvas platform, okay? Now I will pull up that range, the range address here, dashboard.gacyberrange.org. That's where you're going to log in and access all of your virtual environment for conducting your labs. Your labs will be conducted and your instructor will give you instructions on which labs will be conducted. It's also going to be listed in the LMS per which day you are on. The instructor will give you information about the labs, talk to you a little bit about those, and probably go in and just kind of get us started in there. And that would be myself or Miss Nicole. From inside of here, again, in the range, you'll be dropped into your overview. This will be the default site that you get, or the default view that you get dropped into. You're going to navigate on the left to the Instances tab, which is synonymous with VM for virtual machine. Here you'll come over and you will only see one item here. You will only see one VM. That is the only item you need. You will click on that item that you have available to you, and you will see a number of tabs pull up here. Opening console, you can either work directly in here, which I don't like because I have to scroll up and down. Sorry, I went into the wrong instance. I don't need you guys to see that one. It's got a bunch of stuff running. So inside of that console, again, you can work from inside here, or you can click here to show in a new tab, which is what I prefer to do, and then open it over here. Now, if you've been active in this tab, it will inactivate this one over here, which may be something that you can refresh and get it to pick back up. But again, if you switch out of the tab and you start working here, you're going to want to open it again, because it will time out the session token here. So you can't really go back and forth. I just like to open a new tab and stay over here. So again, this is your Linux VM. This is the only thing you'll need for doing all of your labs for the training for the next 3 days. Down here on the left, again, you'll see a shortcut to open a terminal window where you can deploy your labs. It'll be labtainer and then the name of the lab, and you'll see that all in your prompt information. And you also have your start bar where you can open, for example, a Firefox browser, and you can log into Canvas from here, maybe keep that up here. You can access resources if you need help, you need to Google something, that's all going to be accessible. These are internet connected machines. Now, for some reason you're having trouble getting to the internet, obviously please let the range staff know. You should have the range director's contact in your agenda and your welcome email, but a quick test, you can go ahead and try to ping 8.8.8.8, which is a Google DNS. If you're able to get out to that, then it looks like you are good. So that is just a quick internet test. But again, this is the Linux environment where you're going to be conducting all of your labs from. So that's about what we have to cover today. Again, I'm going to go ahead and click back over into our Canvas and access our modules. So today we were looking at doing an intro and familiarization. Tomorrow is when we will start our actual training. This is where we will start in the morning with Linux lecture. The purpose of tomorrow's lecture is to make sure that you understand and are familiar with Linux before we start moving forward. Today was just a get you into the range and get you onto a desktop environment. Tomorrow is when we will teach you much more about using the terminal and navigating the CLI for a Linux operating system if that's something you're uncomfortable with. If it's something you're comfortable with, then that means that the Linux commands lab will be very easy for you, and tomorrow will be, at least the beginning of tomorrow will be a breeze. From there, that will be in the morning. Once we move into the afternoon, directly after lunch at 1300, again, this is the link here, we will move into alerting and traffic analysis with Miss Nicole Cliff, and she will be guiding you through that training. After we finish our morning and afternoon lecture, between an hour to an hour and a half, you'll be released to conduct your labs through the Georgia Cyber Range on your own. Now, the Cyber Range will be up and available for the entirety of the day. It will be up and available for you to work on at night. So please understand that once we get kicked off and you guys are doing your labs, even though we will reserve the time in the morning after lecture and in the afternoon after lecture, you can go back into those labs at any point during this week and go ahead and work on those. So I will pause and give everyone a few minutes to go ahead and take a look at these platforms if you haven't been able to do so while I was discussing them, and collect any questions in the live chat that we may not have covered. So because I can't do too many things at once, and I've got the range pulled up in front of me, I guess in the live chat we had some folks that were unclear as far as logging into the machine. So my apologies for that. These have already been logged into, and that's why you did not see me go into a login prompt. But what I'll do is I'll actually, let me back us out. We'll go here and I'll log out and log back in. I know that Miss Nicole, who's monitoring our chat, gave some instructions for the logging in to those, but I'll go ahead and just run through and show that here. So I'm going to log out of this machine. Well, lock the screen anyways. All right, so you will have a different screen. It's going to be GTA_pass, and I'll show you a full logout. You do not need to log out or lock the computer upon exit. You have exclusive use and access to the VM that's within your environment. Everyone's VM looks the same, but again, you have exclusive use to that VM inside of your environment. So to wake this up, I'm going to, it's not waking up for me. Just open a new one. Oops. Yay for live demos. Hang on.
I wouldn't worry about it, Sarah.
All right. So we will go ahead and just continue on because I have having some network slowdown over here. I don't know if we have any other questions that we can look at, go over, as opposed or as they can concern logging into the items for access for training, but we'll stand by and collect those and try to answer those. I'm just going to restart this because I may have hit the wrong button. If for some reason, actually that brings up a good point, if for some reason you think you need to reboot your machine, you can absolutely do that. It will not hurt anything. If you look from this tab here with instances, rather than clicking on that, you go over to the right, you click on this drop down, and you do the hard reboot instance. Now please be careful here. We don't want you to delete the instance because then everything you've done is gone. But if you notice the hard reboot or soft reboot, those are absolutely fine. You can definitely do those. Those are just simply going to restart that instance for you. It's the same as restarting your computer. A soft reboot is going to issue commands to the operating system. A hard reboot is sort of like when you hold that power button down until your computer shuts off and turns back on. So for questions concerning activities inside of the range, if you can contact Chris Apsey, our range director. His email is CAP. Okay, Miss Nicole's put that in the chat. So if you can contact Chris Apsey, he's going to be able to facilitate or give you someone to help facilitate working through any issues you have inside of the VM outside the scope of the actual labs, but just basic operations, having issues navigating inside of the VMs not acting right, that type of thing.
Sarah, just make
Right now?
Yeah.
Can everyone still hear me?
ask them to put something in chat if they can't.
If you can please let us know in chat if you cannot hear us. Oops, that's not what I thought it would do. Does it look like we have any other questions, Nicole, that we can help with? Okay. All right, so again, you guys can, and this is actually, let me close with this. If you guys go into your LMS, your Canvas LMS, you can use the inbox feature there to send messages to each other, folks that are in the course, as well as the instructors, myself or Nicole. This is actually a great way to get a hold of us because our inboxes are very cluttered up, but the inbox function in Canvas and our LMS will send something directly to our email, and we can monitor that in a much more organized fashion within the LMS. So I'd encourage that you reach out to us if you're having some specific issues logging into Canvas, or your account doesn't seem to work on the range or something like that. You can reach out to Chris Apsey via the email that Nicole provided in the chat. So again, tomorrow we're going to be logging on live at 9 a.m. to begin streaming. We'll discover more about Linux, we'll do some demonstrations, and then everyone will have an opportunity to practice some of those Linux-based commands and get to know the operating system at that point. I think that concludes our session. So we're getting done a little early, which is, again, good. You guys can take the time to look at the topics, take a look at the lab prompts, and get familiar with the environment. If you have any issues getting to the actual Canvas site or to the YouTube live streaming site, please bring that into our attention as soon as you can by emailing us. You can email cybertraining@augusta.edu, or you can email myself or Nicole Cliff. Our emails are srees@augusta.edu. That's my email. And Nicole is acliff, ACLIFF@augusta.edu. We'll make sure that those are in the chat as well so that you have those on hand to contact us if you have issues. Hang on. Let me just try this one thing. I Googled it. Let me see if it works.
On live. We don't
Huh?
want to do that on live. We can just follow back up with them.
Okay. Do you want to unmute me real quick?
Yep.
All right. So we're going to follow up If you want to follow up with the range director about any issues inside of your VMs, I will let you know that on the bottom of the screen where you see 1, 2, 3, 4, those are going to be the desktops. Do not move from desktop 1. If you have, you can restart your machine to bring you back into desktop 1. I cannot seem to get it moved back from another desktop, and that's simply because of the way this particular environment is coming through the browser. It's not able to take the right keystroke input in order to get us back to our home desktop. So stay on desktop 1. If you've navigated away from desktop 1, just restart that computer and it will bring you back into desktop 1. Stay away from those other desktops. As far as restarting your computer, again, if you look at those instances on the far right-hand side inside of your desktop, you should see a drop-down and it will have a soft reboot or a hard reboot option. Those will just simply power down and power it back up. You can do that to get yourself back into desktop 1. Desktops 2, 3, and 4 we're not going to be using, and the input through this particular display coming through the browser is not going to let you, it looks like it's not going to let you go back into desktop 1. So just stay in your primary desktop and you should be okay. And we will see everyone tomorrow at 9 a.m.